I asked the lady in the liquor store for directions, and she told me to just drive on down North Shore Drive until I came to a big sign made of wood that said Greer Park, and if I caught the thing, that she would barbecue it. We both laughed, and I drove on in search of the 7-foot, 300-pound whatever it was that could cause so much commotion. The farther I drove from the cars and civilization, the more imaginative my mind got, and the more stories I remembered about the thing, the it, the goat man, the scale man, the Lake Worth monster.
Hey everyone, John Michael here. This is part 2 of H2OMG's quest for the Lake Worth Monster miniseries. This second episode will feature several dramatic readings, like the one you just heard, from the definitive source on the Lake Worth Monster. It's a self-described, semi-fictional book by Sallie Ann Clarke titled The Lake Worth Monster of Greer Island, Fort Worth, Texas, and it was written and published in 1969, very soon after the famous monster sightings. If you listened to the last episode, Quest for the Lake Worth Monster Part 1, Let the Quest Begin, you'll know all about this book and Sallie Ann Clarke. Michelle Villafranca very kindly let me borrow her copy of the book. I read it, I loved it, and I wanted to share it with you. Also, a huge thanks to Jillian North for all the dramatic readings she provided in her extremely authentic Texas accent. Now, let's get into it. Okay.
I think this is going to be great.
Yeah, I think it's going to be awesome.
It's going to be fun.
Okay. It was the summer of 1969. July 9th to be exact, a mere 11 days before Neil Armstrong became the first human to set foot on the moon.
That's one small step for man.
The Vietnam War was in full swing. A Creedence Clearwater Revival song was probably playing on every single radio. And in the woods of Greer Island, a mysterious creature was lurking in the darkness.
As a freelance writer and private detective, I've been around. I know a few people, and I heard a lot of tall tales, but the Lake Worth monster really beats them all. However, there is no doubt in my mind that something kooky isn't taking place in the small dirt roads out around our beautiful Lake Worth. And tonight, I felt a little, well, I wouldn't say afraid, but again, I don't feel very brave. It's getting darker. The limbs of the trees are getting closer overhead. The underbrush is impossible to see into, and I'm not too sure where I am. I can see the reflection of the stars in the lake. Now and then I hear a bullfrog croak. Other early night noises are louder than at any other time. A rabbit just ran across the road in front of me. I'm glad he was brown. As small as he was, he looked like a dog to me. Yeah, I'm sure glad he wasn't white. Well, there are white rabbits, you know.
Sallie Ann Clarke was a Fort Worth local at the time of the 1969 sightings and, like a lot of other Fort Worth citizens, got swept up in monster madness. Back then, Greer Island was a little bit of a lover's lane type situation, and on the evening of July 9th, a few couples were parked in a clearing on the island, probably minding their own wholesome businesses, I'm sure. All of a sudden, a 7-foot-tall, 350-pound creature with snow-white fur and scales leapt out of the trees and landed on top of their cars. The creature tried to grab one of them, but they sped away just in time. Word of the mysterious encounter quickly spread around town, and the next night, several dozen people gathered in that same clearing to see what they could see. And, wouldn't you know it, all of a sudden, the creature appeared high up on a ridge and reportedly tossed a full-size car tire about 500 feet. That's the most ridiculous thing about this whole story. This legendary tire toss officially kicked off Lake Worth monster madness. The next night, the island was filled with locals looking for the creature, many of whom were packing heat, i.e., guns.
I reached in my glove compartment to see if I had my pistol. Yeah, it was there. I was glad some off-duty officer had taken the time and taught me to shoot the thing. I held it up in front of my face and looked to see if it was loaded.
Just imagine, a tiny island filled to the brim with who knows how many Texans, armed to the teeth, amped up on adrenaline, all looking to shoot something. Frankly, it's a miracle nobody was killed. I think this may be harder to believe than the stories of the monster itself. It was at this point that Sallie Ann Clarke decided to involve herself and perform her own investigation. She grabbed a notepad and tape recorder and drove on down to Greer Island.
I pondered over this very carefully, and I decided to give it my full attention. I personally interviewed the people in part 1 of this story. All appeared serious and stable witnesses. On Friday evening, about 5:30, the 11th day of July, I set out to see the Lake Worth monster for myself. I drove down North Shore Drive around Lake Worth. I stopped at a liquor store and asked for directions to Greer Island. This is where the 3 couples said they were parked when the monster jumped from a tree onto the top of their car. They saw the thing and described it as a goat-like man, white with scales on it. All 6 people agreed it was animal and human-like, and all said it was white.
The book is absolutely filled with transcriptions of the interviews she conducted with people claiming to have seen the monster. In fact, most of the book is exactly that. Other times she slips into elaborate scenes that I think is what she's referring to when she describes the book as semi-fictional. There's one really long scene that goes on for pages, which we won't do a reading of, but I'd like to try to condense it because it's just too strange to leave out. Basically, she goes out monster hunting on the island during the day with a big group of Fort Worth citizens of all ages. Her and the little boy fall behind the rest of the group when they stop to take a break on a big rock. The boy falls asleep and she hears some really close-by monster noises. She decides not to wake the boy up and runs away to climb up a tree. She leaves her camera on the rock but brings her notebook, which she used to take notes on this whole weird scene. The monster walks up to the boy and sniffs around. It reaches out and scratches the boy's cheek, which wakes him up. The boy sees the monster upon waking and isn't scared or anything. He very nonchalantly says verbatim, "Hi, horror monster, where is my cousin?" The monster doesn't answer. He just picks up Sally's camera and accidentally snaps a selfie while examining it and runs off into the woods. The monster very conveniently took her camera with him. She climbs down from the tree and they rejoin the group. Both of them decide not to mention this to anyone else for some reason. Anyway, there were many more reported sightings in the same general area over the next few nights, with the monster's supposed activities getting more serious and more frightening. The following is a first-hand account told to Sallie Ann Clarke by a family she interviewed.
They couldn't believe what they saw before their very own eyes. The thing was a big white monster with long hairy arms, and as it jumped from branch to branch with its right hand, it carried my cousin in its left arm. Each jump it made, it cried out. My mom said she was so frightened she put me and my sister in the car and yelled for my aunt to come get in so she could go for help. She said my aunt was running along under the thing, screaming at it and begging it to put her son down. My mom started blowing the car horn. Mom said just as my aunt turned around and started back towards the car crying, the thing threw my cousin at her. That's when she ran to his unconscious body. It cried out louder than before and jumped from the tree within 10 feet of where the boy lay. Mom said she just knew it would get my aunt. She started the car and drove over to where it was. She was blowing the car horn as hard and loud as she could. Mom said the monster ran over to the car and started beating on the glass window on the driver's side. My aunt grabbed up the body of my cousin and ran over to the other side of the car and climbed in. My mom said the thing had beat the glass until it was a solid, shattered mess. Broken pieces of glass was all over her lap and in the front of the car. She said once my aunt was in the car, she drove off as fast as she could. The last they saw of the big, giant, white goatfish-like man, he was eating their picnic lunch. They had the dead child's funeral 2 days later. Mom said there was a full investigation, but no one would believe what she and my aunt told them.
What exactly was this creature? There were several theories circulating at the time. Many thought it was a bobcat, at least that's what law enforcement was saying, to convince gun-toting Texans to stay away from the island. One unhelpful person suggested it might be something that fell from the moon, and it was more scared of us than we were of it. An extremely logical theory, in my humble opinion, has to do with teenagers and their love of playing pranks. It seems pretty suspicious that this happened in the summer, a time when kids are famously bored and looking for trouble to get up to. Not to mention, the sightings just happened to stop when the summer ended. Now, I'm not naming any names, but one of the hosts of this very podcast may or may not have done plenty of stupid stuff like that in his youth, just because he and his friends were bored and wanted to mess with people. That's just speculation, though.
Hundreds of people have seen the monster. It's rumored to have roamed around the lake and Greer Island for over 20 years. It's not likely to leave just because I wrote a story about it. I hope you too will see or hear it.
A few days after the monster sightings, the crew of Apollo 11 landed on the moon and returned safely to Earth. Lake Worth monster fever gave way to lunar fever, and the people of Fort Worth turned their eyes from the dark forest below to the dark night sky above. Sallie Ann Clarke's book inspired me to take up the search for the Lake Worth monster myself. I love a good mystery. I mean, you're talking to a man who once single-handedly, at a previous job, solved the mystery of his co-worker's missing hummus. So if anyone is qualified to solve this mystery, it's me, and I'm determined to do just that. It turns out that the legend of the Lake Worth monster goes far deeper than I could have possibly imagined. One piece of the puzzle led me to yet another piece. One strand unraveled the tapestry a little bit more. One expert led me straight to another expert. How far down does the legend of the Lake Worth monster go? Stay with us. Thanks for listening. Join us next week as the quest for the Lake Worth monster continues.